Hey, this is Mike Seagraves, and this Momentum class is the emotionally intelligent agent. So we're going to get into the psychology, a little bit of real estate, and there is a book that goes along with this class. I would highly recommend that you download that and work through that book as you go through the class, because I'm very quickly going to go through the video itself. So let's jump right in. So the overview is to increase the agent's emotional intelligence or awareness to build a thriving buying and selling experience for their clients. So in essence, we're trying to improve the agent and their abilities uh, psychologically, conceptually, to increase the overall experience of the client. So the expectation upon completing this class, you should feel confident enough to incorporate emotional intelligence sales strategies, best practices, and emotional intelligence growth techniques in building your sales business. Let me get my screen on the right page. Gaining an understanding of what emotional intelligence is and the 5 core competencies that are comprised of it. Concepts, ideas, tools to understand, manage, and use emotional intelligence. Content and exercises are also part of this exercise, which is why you should have the book. There are scripts and questions for leveraging the emotional aspect or the intelligence piece. Techniques to help you improve will be a part of this class. Excuse me. Begin to build an emotional intelligence sales strategy to implement in your business. And last, the conceptual system to take away from the course to begin the emotional intelligence practice of understanding and managing the use of delivery of the best customer service. So what's this course about? So an emotionally intelligent agent course teaches how to understand, manage, and use emotional intelligence throughout the real estate transaction to provide the best experience for your client. Understanding what emotional intelligence is drives into self-awareness, self-regulation, and client implementation to begin building an emotional strategy to implement into your business. So what are one of the truths that we know about emotional intelligence? Decisions are based on emotion. Emotions drive our decisions while logic justifies it. And as you know, as a realtor, in many instances, what we do in real estate is an emotional transaction, unless, of course, it's commercial real estate where it tends to be numeric or about the dollars and the cents. So people are making decisions based on emotion, and emotions will drive the decisions, but logic will justify it. So there are 5 competencies that we're going to get into in detail in the remainder of the class. We're going to talk about empathy. We're going to talk about social skills, self-awareness, self-regulation, and motivation. And of course, that's going to spin off into other conversations. So let's spend some time on that. So of those competencies, self-awareness is the process of being able to detect or identify your own emotions and understand the root of their existence. We're going to go over that in section 1. Self-regulation is the process of recognizing and responding to your emotions in a positive and productive way. Again, we're going to go over that in section 2. And then social skill, which is the process of building rapport and connection with others, is section 3. And also in 3 is empathy, which is the process of cultivating a better understanding of your client's desires and their emotions and desires and emotions of others. So, and then the last piece is motivation, which again, we will touch base in section 1 and 3. And that is the process of gaining clarity of your own as well as your client's drive during the home buying and selling process. So understanding, manage, and use. So what we're doing is emotion gives us choices. Choices gives us the ability to have action. Actions create habits. Habits create character. Character creates destiny. And out of that is our legacy. So it's kind of a high level of what we're going to be doing. So they talk about the doing aspect as being the emotion, the choices, and the action, and becoming is really the who we are. So that gives you a little bit of an internal piece. So there are some there's a self-evaluation set of questions in the book. I would tell you to pause the video at this point and work your way through these questions, gaining a better understanding of how you think and how you operate and how you work with your clients. So assuming that you're moving forward, I'll keep going, but this would be the perfect place to stop the video. So in self-awareness, we understand that understanding emotions in others and communicating our understanding of these emotions requires us to be in touch with our own feelings. A lot of times as an agent, the most successful agents have the ability to rise above the emotion of a transaction and not get involved into the emotions that the buyer and the seller may interject into the transaction. But you also have to understand that a lot of times what makes us as agents better are dealing with emotional scenarios so that we can say, hey, how could I stop that event from happening again? So you have to go through the realization of how you get to where you go. And self-awareness, first off, you have to detect, you have to be able to recognize the oncoming emotion. You also have to be able to identify what the emotion is, but you need to also understand it and be able to head that off at the pass. So, you know, sometimes buyers will make offers on properties and a seller may respond in a certain way. A classic example of something that's going on is in 2021, our government would, because of COVID, had made it difficult for landlords to evict tenants. And tenants were having a hard time making their payments. So one of the things that what you could do in a contract is you may not have anticipated the problem, but the buyer assumed that the tenant was going to be gone at the time of closing. So as an agent, we would detect and understand that the lay of the land is evictions are going to be difficult. We would identify that not having something in the contract to address this tenant and its lease would be short-sighted, and being able to understand that and maybe put something contractually that says, you know, hey, the seller has issued a 3-day notice or has told the tenant that there won't be an extension of the lease, might go a long way in heading off a problem that the buyer may have to inherit if they were to close on this property. So one of the things we talk about in self-awareness is the ability to be calm, level-headed, emotionally charged, have an approach, and ready to respond. So we talked about those a little bit in the last slide, but this would be an area for you to digest as you go through this book. And then, and so also in self-awareness, we get into philosophies of emotions and states of emotion of where you are and emotions that tend to be tied together. So on the one slide here, it talks about being surprised. Surprised would also lead to being startled. Startled would be shocked. So you might be surprised by the answer, but then it becomes, are you startled or appalled or shocked? So there's a range of emotions that you would benefit from in starting to understand how to not allow the next emotion to take place. So the purpose, so in this, here's another exercise in helping you to complete the buying process. This is something that, again, you should stop and work your way through. You know, what are the emotions that you have as you go through the different variables and the different steps of the transaction, and being able to understand those secondly is key. So you may need to take a few days and work through this exercise, because your ability to take your weaknesses and turn them into positives is what's going to make you a better agent. And again, we go through the same process on the listing conversion. Again, we're talking about self-awareness. We're identifying our motivators. And so is it something you want? Is it something you desire? Is it a passion or is it an obsession? And so we, out of pain or out of challenges there's growth. And being able to better understanding where we are weak will allow us to work on ourselves and become better. But a lot of times what we talk about in momentum is becoming uncomfortable, doing the things that we just really don't want to do. I mean, a lot of us don't like the public speak. And I'm one of those. You know, I can do well with a video, or I can do well one-on-one, but in a big group, it is not my thing. I have to work on that. So being able to understand where you come from, where your weaknesses are, where your strengths are, is going to go a long way in understanding who you are and how you're going to operate with your deals. So what are steps for continued self-awareness improvement? Begin with the questions. And so daily journaling is one. Being able to intentionally reflect on a situation. One of the things I used to do when I was showing houses more prevalently is, after showing a house, I would get in the car and I would reflect on the showing. What were things that were said that I didn't know the answer to? What were things that were said that could have been an emotional event? How could I better convey that situation so that I didn't experience that pain again? And kind of work through those. So write down your motivators and your drives in life. It's step number 4. Again, this is an interactive class, and it will only be effective if you take the time to work on yourself. Self-regulation is the ability to control one's emotions and feelings in order to prevent negatively disrupting the emotional state of others. This ability also dictates how well a person can emotionally adapt to changing situations. And so a lot of this is self-explanatory, and you would think common sense, but when we're dealt with an event as it happens, common sense a lot of times goes out the window. And you know, and we hear people say, I want to treat you the way I want to be treated. There's a lot to be said for that, and you just have to figure out what that is. So again, we saw this slide a few back. We're going to get into the approach at this point. So moving forward, we're going to, the next time you face an undesirable emotion, before you respond, ask yourself, will my response or reaction disrupt the emotional state of myself or those around me? You know, think about a troubled situation, delivering bad news. How's it going to be responded? How am I delivering it is going to set the table for the outcome. If the answer is yes, or potentially yes, reconfigure your approach to be more effective, to have a more effective response that leverages your self-awareness growth. Establishing clear, mindful, and awareness through your emotions puts you in a mindful or mindset of how you might feel if you were in your client's shoes. So can't agree with this more. I think that you have to know, you have to think like a seller when you're a buyer. You have to think like a buyer when you're a seller. Those exercises will go a long way in understanding the person in the other shoes. And as an agent, because we try to rise above the emotion of the transaction, we do have to be in touch with the emotion so that we aren't insensitive to the delivery or insensitive to how that individual is looking at it. Again, we're in the managing. Typical responses to criticism is are you defensive when somebody criticizes you? Do you make excuses? Do you minimize the problem, attempt to rationalize, sidestep the issue, or shift blame? Those are, I look at that, and just as a point of self growth, if there's times that I don't like to hear the criticism, I'll be honest, I'm human. I fall into one of these categories. For me personally, I probably become more defensive because we don't like to hear that. We don't, but it takes a lot to be able to say, I deserve to hear that, because out of this there will be growth. So ask yourself, how would your client feel if you took a typical response to a situation during the home buying / selling process? Could I potentially lose their business? We've been in situations where a deal falls apart, and all of a sudden our client loses confidence in us. And it probably came down to was our delivery. How are we treating them from a customer service aspect? Business should not be confused with busyness. As our productivity increases, we spread ourselves thin in an attempt to accomplish our goals. So it's a really good point. Real estate years ago was harder to do because of technology wasn't as prevalent. We try to leverage so much of what we do with technology that service sometimes goes out the window. And as a broker, I get calls often that the consumer says, my agent hasn't called me in 3 weeks, or my agent won't answer the phone, or my agent won't give me an update. We work for the public. We are there to help them facilitate this sale. And we have to make ourselves available to help them. So again, here's another self-reflection exercise that I would ask you to go through. It talks about your intentional meditation. You take the time to talk about or self-reflect on what it is you're doing, but follow the exercises in the book. Again, this might be a perfect time to halt the video and spend some time. So the last piece, and I see here on my screen that it's kind of cut off at the bottom because my office and my head are in the way. So we're getting ready to deal with ready to respond. Am I ready to positively and productively respond, which is also referred to as the implementation. So there are steps in each sale process. Building a relationship is to complement the person's emotions. Plan ahead for the interaction. Develop back pocket questions, things that will help you strengthen the relationship and grow in the relationship. And then it talks about find the need, meet the need, jump the hurdles, ask for the sale. So what would that look like? Find the need, understanding, being curious is what we refer to it as sometimes. Being able to understand why they're doing what they're doing. How do I meet your need? How do I exceed the needs of you, my buyer, or you, my seller? I would need to ask questions of what's been your experience in the past? How do I meet? Maybe how do I exceed your needs? Jump the hurdles, being able to understand the whole picture, being able to walk in that individual's shoes so that you don't make the same mistake. And then last but not least is ask for the sale. So you would want to, this may be uncomfortable for you, but you want to say, why not me? Let me list your property. I know I can sell your house. One of the things that I would encourage you to do when you're going on a listing appointment is look at the seller and say, I know I can sell your house. You have a great house. I know I can sell it. These people have lived in this house 20, 30, 40 years. They've got an appreciation for it that you'll never have. But being able to make them feel the comfort that you can sell this house for them is going to go a long way in building that relationship. So again, we're in another exercise. The exercise of talking about the sales strategy, we sometimes talk about mirroring emotions. and reading people's body language. Take the time to go through this exercise as well. And I will stop. I'll say this again at the end, but I'll stop at this point. And also, if you have questions about this class specifically, I want you to feel free to reach out to me and say, hey, I'm struggling. Maybe it's on page 32. Give me an idea what part you're struggling with, and if we need to set some time and talk about it, I absolutely want to help you through it. But this class specifically does spend a lot of time. Its effectiveness is going to come from you committing to yourself. So we're going to talk about, so in this implementation, it's talking about building a rapport. It's understanding what the client's motivation is, which is also our North Star, and being able to be vulnerable and understanding the emotions of what this person may be going through is going to help you to get to, again, the goal or the North Star, which is the sale. You want to be able to improve on unfavorable or conflict resolutions. We want to be able to communicate effectively. That comes from what do we say and how do we say it. Active listening. There is not enough active listening happening in society these days. So active listening is doing a lot of me doing more listening and me doing less talking. That becomes telling. And I need to be able to understand where you're coming from. And sometimes that person may not communicate effectively enough that you have to start asking questions. And you may want to look at them and say, if I'm hearing you right, what I'm hearing is you want this kind of house, and get their buy-in or get them to affirm that that is in fact right, so that you have drawn that line in the sand to say, I'm on the same page with you. And you make them feel more confident in your abilities when you repeat back to them what it is you're doing for them. It talks about reviewing the options, and then in the end, it's a win-win solution. So to be a win-win solution, if either party feels as though they're lost in the solution, that's where really you've lost in the equation. But to gain each other's trust allows for benefits to take place and allows for the sale to happen. Again, we're going to go into a relationship building rapport exercise. Again, I'd like to see you spend some time talking about, how do you approach this rapport and motivations, and it's going to get into the social skills and the empathy aspect. Again, this slide is meant for, now that you've taken this exercise, how to improve, and spend some time self-reflecting on that. And then we're going to put it all together. So again, we're emotionally intelligent growth steps is number one, understand, being able to become more self-aware. Number two is being able to manage, which is through self-regulation, be able to manage myself. Number three is use, or growing your social skills, identifying motivations, and becoming more empathetic. And so there are four key and techniques that we would want to use for improvement, which is mindful self-assessment and self-reflection, core motivation connections, active listening, and delayed gratification. So you've heard the term, we have to give first before we can receive. And I will say that in real estate, that is no different. The public responds more to you giving of yourself first than trying to take for yourself first. So understanding the emotional intelligence growth system. So again, we're kind of getting into implementing daily practices, things to help you grow. Again, we're talking about journaling, self-reflection. This is a kind of a referendum or an assessment on yourself. And if you need somebody to tell you the way it is, we've all got 3 or 4 good friends that we could go to and say, hey, do I do this? Do I get defensive when I'm presented with bad information? How do I come off to you? And one of the exercises that you can always do is do what I'm doing. Sit here on video and record yourself and see how you are portrayed. Play it back. You may realize that you communicate well, but you may also realize you have some nervous energy, or maybe you talk fast, or it's the way you say it. Things that you can learn to improve that will increase your effectiveness in your communication. So again, we're still going through this growth system, and then in the end, we're putting it all together. So I want to thank you again for taking the time to go through this class. I know it's relatively quick. The video is more as a self-assurance to kind of walk you through it. Look for this class in the future in person. And again, last but not least, if you have questions, or if you're struggling, or if you just need advice on how to get through some aspects of the emotional intelligent agent, I'm happy to help you. Just reach out to me and we'll schedule some time to talk. Okay, take care. See ya.